And we're live. Hey, everybody. I'm here with Miles Davis, and we're going to be discussing, I'm sure, all things Miles, especially St. Bees, Isle of Man, and all of those things that have happened over the course of last year. Miles, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be here.
And, of course, Trepane Law, which is the latest thing that's going on. So, Miles, I think me and you met each other, I guess around the St. Bees time, huh? Was it? Or maybe just a little before?
Well, I think I first became aware of you. I think I'd noticed you on a hangout or two. Sean Huffer or Red said somebody had, but it was your first Pontchartrain photographs that I first twigged on. I think probably the Isle of Man St. Bees stuff was kicking off not long after that.
Yeah, just after that, yeah. So, speaking of the St. Bees debacle, I would like to call it, would our final conclusion be that we cannot see Ireland from St. Bees?
Yes. In fact, that was the first conclusion.
Yes, I do believe we figured that out within the day. Yeah.
I saw Anthony Riley's first video on that. I actually woke up one morning. I was having a cup of coffee, still sitting in bed, and I picked up the laptop and had a quick look on YouTube, and there was this, and I'd had a few exchanges with Anthony already, and I saw this video and I thought, Ireland, you're kidding. And I think it took me 3 minutes of searching, just looking at maps and stuff to work out exactly what he was showing, which was just another bit of the Isle of Man. So I kind of debunked it within 3 minutes of seeing the video. But the whole saga went on for what seemed like 3 years after that.
It was unbelievable. Yeah. At some point, I just stopped paying attention because the interesting thing is, if you stop paying attention for a little while and you come back, you'll realize just how far they've moved the goalposts. They're walking around the goalposts on their shoulders for Isle of Man.
Yeah.
So you and Al K eventually went out there, right?
Yeah.
So
well,
yeah.
I mean, it took. I mean, after the first of his videos was pretty comprehensively debunked, but he was still arguing the toss, and he then produced another video and said it was taken from the same place. And 2 or 3 people spotted that it was obviously taken from a different place, but he wouldn't accept that, and he wouldn't give anybody the original video. And so I thought, well, the only way to deal with this is to actually go there, and I actually had an opportunity to go there. Unfortunately, Al was able to go as well, so we ended up having a P900 there instead of my tiny little cameras.
If I recall correctly, I actually linked up you and Al, if you remember that.
I think you were involved, actually. Yeah.
So I thought,
because you knew I was planning to go, and you were saying, let's get this guy a P900 or a better camera or something together.
Well, that's well, you should do a GoFundMe and get a P1000 or something for real. You should do that. I think you deserve it, especially with all of your observations.
But I've just sort of monetized my channel, and I don't know. I don't like this sort of, people call it e-begging, and I don't know.
Yeah, I'm also that way.
For personal gain, it's a difficult thing. I mean, I put a lot of time into making the videos now, and have done for quite a while. So I kind of think if I get a little bit back for that, it's maybe not such a bad thing. Right. But just saying I want a fancy camera, go and give me $10 towards it, kind of thing, is, I don't know.
Yeah,
rattles a little bit. On the other hand, I'm
the same way. I have a hard time. I have a hard time doing the eBay. I feel like if I could provide a product like the photography itself, I've actually been looking at different ways to sell the actual photographs. Some people have asked for posters. Some people have asked for framed photographs and things like that. So, I mean, I do have something of value, which is the photography, and I could potentially sell that, and that would make a lot more sense, honestly, than begging for money.
Yeah.
So, with the St. Bees stuff and the Isle of Man things, I did have Chemo ask me to ask you a question.
All right. Okay, go ahead.
Chemo asked, he said, can you confirm the height of the drain at St. Bees? And I don't know what drain he's referring to, but I think he's talking about.
I think what he's talking about is the place where we took the video of the sunset, and that's had all the wind turbine stuff video at the same time, because that was just as the sun was going down, and it's definitely around 40 feet, maybe even as high as 45 feet above mean sea level. And I really wanted to prove that to Riley, because he kept saying it was only 20 feet or 30 feet or something, and
right.
was desperate. And actually, one of the days when I was there early in the morning, and they were going to be there later in the day. And I had a plan to put a helium balloon on a 40-foot long string attached to a rock, so that he could actually, when they got there, they'd see this helium balloon. But it was really, really windy, so that didn't work out because it wouldn't just float straight up.
So were you actually trying to like?
So I was going to leave.
Or were you trying to like say, "Yeah, we know" type thing? Well, what were you trying to do there?
Well, I left it there, and in the hope that it would just be pointing straight up. But I knew it wouldn't. It just was blown down by the wind, so it was flat on the beach. So that wasn't very successful. But yeah, I mean, they went and did some really crappy measurements, and Al and I did some slightly better ones. They were arguing. His original claim was the cliff height where he took his first video was 35 feet, because that's what Google Earth said.
Right.
And Google Earth is really bad at sharp slopes, at very steep slopes. It smooths everything out. So it's completely wrong. And you only had to, as soon as I got there, I just walked to the top of the cliff and looked down, and I thought, I know what 30 feet looks like. I mean, it's the length of the living room where I grew up,
That actually brings up a point. Do you think that they're just that bad with 3D geometry, or do you think that he was intentionally trying to deceive people?
I think it's intentional deception on some people's part, and I think in their case it definitely is. They're not remotely interested in actually finding out what the truth is. So even when they were going there to make their measurements, I'm convinced that they were trying. It's the confirmation bias thing. They were going to do it in a way that gave them the answer they wanted to get. And even when they went with a tape measure. Now, I took a tape measure there, and actually, when they were on the non sequitur show, I was actually on that as well, but I didn't get a chance to chip in at all, which was a bit unfortunate. But I'd actually got a video to show, and which I hadn't put on my channel, of me throwing a 30-meter tape over the edge of the cliff, and it didn't get anywhere near the bottom. But they took a tape measure there as well, and they were still trying to argue that it was 35 feet, even though they'd actually run a tape measure from top to bottom, and they knew it was, way over 100 feet at one end and about 80 feet at the other end. So definitely intentional deception at that point.
So at that period of time, I was noticing that as the goalpost got moved, eventually we were arguing about tens of feet.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, why are we arguing about tens of feet? I mean, we're arguing about tens of feet on the globe prediction versus arguing about the hundreds of feet on the flat Earth prediction.
Exactly.
That's the thing that I noticed a lot of times. They want to keep arguing about those tens of feet on the globe prediction, so they can avoid the fact that there's hundreds of feet off on the flat Earth prediction.
Yeah.
And so why, at that time, I was thinking, why do we keep doing this? Why do we keep letting them push us this way? You know, it's obviously a technique that they're using. And at some point, I just realized, as soon as they start arguing, you know, about edge cases, is what I like to call them. As soon as they start arguing about edge cases, we should just stop right there. It should just be a red flag for all of us to stop right there and go, we're not going to argue about edge cases, dude. We already know refraction can do this. So
I agree completely. Yeah.
We all already know this. We've talked about it for so long that, and I mean, we all actually have footage showing refraction changing, you know, obstruction that much. So what's the point of even arguing about that?
Yeah.
You know, again, that's just part of the conventional model.
Yeah. So I mean, about that time, they were all getting a bit wound up, but I actually had to take a bit of a time off from YouTube. It was early last year. So I kind of missed the end of the whole Isle of Man thing completely because I was busy doing other things.
I actually wanted to ask you about that. I took some time off from YouTube as well. But from my perspective, it was kind of around the time that Ranty was making this boat observation and you called him out on something that he was being dishonest about. And at that point, they started just going after you.
Yeah.
And that's when I first heard Miles the liar, quote unquote, which is really rich coming from 3 liars. But my question to you was, did that experience, because didn't you kind of take off after that?
It was a little bit after that. So that kind of started around about the end of November, beginning of December. So just over a year ago. And it was just after Christmas. It was January, maybe it was the end of January, beginning of February, I think. Sort of time. My dad fell ill, and I think it was, I can't remember the exact dates, but it was maybe March or something like that. That beginning of March, that actually stopped putting videos out and stopped really even looking at YouTube very much at all.
I got you. Taking care of your dad.
Yeah. And then I said, well, we were looking after my dad, and we knew it was near the end, and he died towards the end of April, and
Understood.
There's too many other things to do in life around those sorts of times, anyway.
I was just wondering if the vile nature of that whole attack.
I think
back off for a while, but if your dad was fallen ill, that makes sense.
I don't think that sort of stuff would ever make me stop doing something I thought was important, and I still do think this kind of stuff is important for a number of other reasons. So yeah, I mean, I found it very upsetting at the start because I knew that I hadn't ever done anything with the intention of deceiving someone, and particularly because I knew that some of the people that were accusing me of doing that had intentionally tried to deceive people. You know, it was a bit upsetting, but it didn't really bother me, and it just made me and now I take it almost as a compliment. You know, I get comments on it almost every video. You know, instead of actually addressing the subject of the video, they just come on and say, "Ha, lying again, Miles," or something like that.
Right.
That's it. You know, and you just go, yeah. You've got no answer. You've got no answer.
At some point, you have to.
They had to go at you. They had to go at you as well. I mean, they called you some pretty dodgy things, and you know, calling you fraudulent at one point, weren't they? And
they're still doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, you have to just understand that. You know what they're not interested in saying something that's like factual or backed up by evidence. All they want to do is just demean you, defame your character, and that's it. You know, that's their goal, is to attack the character of people that are providing evidence and that are actually good character people, because they're not good character people, and we're hurting their pocketbooks. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. We're hurting their, not just pocketbooks, but, you know, their fame, their, you know, the quote unquote fame among their people. You know, and that's what, that's why they have to attack us, because they don't have anything else. They don't have actual evidence. So they invent things. The interesting thing, though, is that it works. You know, their minions eat it up. And, so it's really interesting that their minions eat it up. But what I have noticed is that their minions have changed over time, and that our work is making an effect. And what we're ending up with is, you know, a bunch of basically cult leaders and cult members all huddled up in the corner, you know, patting each other on the back and telling each other how great they are, which is, that should be our goal. We're never going to be able to convince all of them that the Earth is a globe, or more than likely most of them know it's a globe already, and they just are interested.
I think some do. I think some are actually for. I have been, one of the things that I've been trying to do, and very unsuccessfully, and I'd like to be more successful at it, is actually talking to people who do think the Earth is flat and trying to find out why, and trying to get kind of a little bit into their heads to understand it. And I think there's a group of people who kind of run the big YouTube channel, bigger YouTube channels, and hold all these debates and hangouts and stuff like that. And I think the people who run that stuff are well aware of the true shape of the Earth, and they're just doing it for kicks, for a bit of money, for whatever. But there is a group of other people who do actually really believe what they've been told by the cult leaders, if you like. And I'm really curious about what makes those people tick, why they think the way they do.
Right.
And some of the interactions I've had have been quite interesting. They've not been public, but they've been people who are actually really quite intelligent, quite clever, quite articulate. But somehow they almost have some need to want to believe something that nobody else or not many other people know. And then there's another group of people who really are just, it really pains me to have to say it, but they just really are not very clever.
Right.
And they find the globe Earth explanations difficult to understand, and they find the flat Earth explanations easy to understand. You know, so it's easy to understand I can't feel it spinning. It's easy to understand water doesn't stick to a ball for them. Whereas understanding that gravity will actually make water cling to the surface of a planet-sized object, that's more difficult for them to understand, so they don't even try, if you like. And it's sad to admit, but some people aren't very bright. Yeah, yes.
I have a very hard time really, I guess, convincing myself that is true, because some of the things that we bring up are just not, like, it can't be any simpler. Like, you know what I mean?
I agree.
Like Polaris, right? Well, maybe that one's too complicated.
The
moon.
The moon.
How about the moon? I mean, the moon doesn't shrink when it moves away from you. How can it be any simpler than that? I mean,
yeah, the sun and the moon not getting bigger and smaller as they rise and set. That should be simple to understand.
Right.
But there's maybe not enough stuff that's simple to understand about the spherical planet idea. I don't know. It's
yeah, but I mean,
you've seen those videos where people are shown a map of the world and they're asked to, can you point out a country, and they kind of stand there going,
right,
Africa, and unfortunately, some people really are just that uneducated or unable to, sort of.
There are some things that just seem so intuitive, like you know, things getting smaller as they move away from you. I mean, not just the moon, but like the whole sky, right? I mean, how, you know, how the stars are their relative distances with the stars should also change, right? I mean, as they move away from you, if they're close and just on a dome type thing. Or like the sun setting but behind the horizon, or your photographs, my photographs, Alkate's photographs, Sean Hufford's multiple sunsets, Wolfie's, all of Wolfie's stuff, you know, with the equatorial mount. I love stuff that Wolfie does with the equatorial mount. I mean, Wolfie just took a photograph of, you know, of the, what am I trying to say? The satellites. What's the word? I'm totally drawing a blank right now, but the satellites that don't move, right?
Star Trail things and
the geostationary satellites. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. So that was a fantastic video. I love that.
Yeah. So I mean, I look at these things and I really wonder, like, I don't think they're seeing them. I don't think they're actually watching them. I think the people that want to believe that the Earth is flat are sitting in echo chambers and not ever watching these videos.
Yeah, well, I think that's the other thing about people who are not, maybe don't have the education or whatever. They don't want to actually challenge themselves. They're maybe even almost frightened that they won't understand it. You know, I don't know, but I think there is a group that are just they fall for the easy, simple explanation. The horizon looks flat. You can't feel the Earth moving. Water doesn't stick to a ball, and that's it. I mean, I've spoken to people, and that's the sum total of their arguments. You know, and as soon as you try and explain something else, they kind of they're going to just no, that can't be right because water doesn't stick to a ball. You know,
even though it does, and we've shown it.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Yeah. So I have a very hard time. Like, I just have a hard time. Go ahead.
It's an unusual kind of thing. It's a difficult thing to actually understand all the different groups of people and why they think the Earth is flat.
It is difficult. Yeah.
I'm curious about it, but
I'm curious also about the psychology. But I've been around a few of them that I think you might categorize as you know, the ones that just don't necessarily have the wit to understand it or whatever. And I don't know, man. At some point, it's like, you know, a person of integrity, once their idea is proven wrong, you know, either stops believing that idea or they stop having integrity.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the ones that you might categorize as that, to me, would have lost their integrity at this point because they don't.
I agree. Yeah.
They don't play by the rules. They're dishonest. You know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
we've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole there.
Yeah, we've gone down a rabbit hole. We have. So let's back out a little bit and let's you took observations as well of these wind turbines. And
yeah.
And my question is, when Ranty Rant duplicated your observations and then called it evidence of a flat Earth, what was your personal perception of that whole conversation?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that probably happened. A lot of that happened around the time that I wasn't so involved, because I just published all those Some Bees videos, and then I kind of took a break for the reasons we've discussed. So I kind of missed out a little bit on discussions about wind turbines. And when I came back onto YouTube and started making videos again, there were a few. But I find Ranty really, really confusing. I've got no idea what makes this guy tick at all. And I'd really, really like to actually have a conversation with him, but he avoids me at all costs for some reason.
Yes.
Okay, so I did.
That's because you're there and you could directly go and debunk him. That's probably why he avoids you.
But I mean, it's so obvious when you stand, and look at these things, and you film them. It's the same with the ships, going over the horizon and stuff like that. Yeah, you can find days when there's all kinds of miraging effects going on, but most of the time there's a nice hard horizon there, and half or 3/4 of the ship is missing, or you can only see the top of a turbine blade going round, and the whole tower and everything else is gone behind the horizon. And how the mental gymnastics they must go through to actually say, oh no, that shows it's flat, everything's hidden by this miraging layer or something.
Right.
Just think, what? Right. How can you come to that conclusion? Ranty has me completely at a loss from a sort of psychology point of view. I've got no idea whether this guy really believes what he's saying, whether he's just one of the cult leaders who is just putting on a good act, or whether he's just really, really dense. I just don't know.
I find it interesting that it seems like every video that he actually puts out matches what we expect to see on the globe.
Yeah.
And then they all sit around in a circle talking about, wow, Ranty, this is amazing. It looks just like what we expect to see on the flat Earth. And I'm like, what? No, it doesn't. And he's like, Ranty's our biggest proponent at the moment. He's just
he has some fantastic globe Earth or flat Earth disproving footage, out there.
Exactly.
But they have conjured up this bonkers sort of angle of attack,
right?
Stuff, which is and this, there's always
which has no definition. That's a strange thing.
It's somehow thousands of feet of
right
stuff can suddenly disappear into a tiny little layer at the horizon.
Yeah, they always ignore. They always want to say that it's something to do with that mirage layer, compression layer. There's always a mirage there or something, and that's what's causing it, which is really ridiculous. Especially whenever there are observations where there is no mirage.
Yeah.
There are observations where the horizon's tack sharp. There's no mirage. The scene conditions are perfect, and at that point, whenever there's 200 feet missing, how can you stick to your guns and say that this is compression layer or angle of attack or whatever they want to call it? It's the same name for two. I mean, it's the same. It's a different name for the same exact made up concept, whatever they're talking about.
Well, we'll probably get on to the recent stuff I've been doing, but one of the reasons that I actually started doing that I actually had the idea about doing it was I was taking some. I've got some really, really good video of lighthouses and islands in the Forth Estuary here in Scotland, and being able to move up and down we've got a few, so they're not very tall cliffs, but we're up and down the cliffs and up and down the beach, and make lighthouses kind of, the lights just disappear when you go a bit too low down and reappear when you walk back up and stuff like that. But at the time I was doing that, that's when Ranty and Oakley and these guys were coming up with all this angle of attack stuff, and I just knew that if I put out these videos, they would just argue that all I was showing was that the angle of attack makes a difference, and I was actually proving the flat Earth. And I thought I need to do something that takes that out of the equation. Let's get away from the horizon and let's show the curvature without using the horizon at all, if we can. And that's when I came up with the idea of using what should be eye level on a flat Earth, and looking at objects in the distance, which has been the last couple of months of stuff, really. Yeah.
One of the implications of the angle of attack, I would say, is that there'd be a real easy way to test this, especially if they're talking about doing this over 30 meters, right? Because or even 10 meters. That's what some of them are doing. They're setting up these tabletop experiments.
Yeah.
And they're saying that angle of attack has something to do with it. Well, the really easy way to test this is you set up your experiment on top of a piece of plexiglass, right? And then you on top of a table, right? And then you just lower the table and see what happens. You know, shouldn't we all of a sudden see more, because the angle of attack isn't there anymore, because we've actually gotten rid of the surface? Or even better, you could like hang objects from the roof line, right? That sit right on top of the table, right? And then go down low and show how the angle of attack works, and then remove the table. What should happen? You know, all of a sudden, all those objects should just like rise up, and you should all of a sudden see all of them, and you should actually see them move, like actually rise vertically, if their angle of attack thing is supposed to work. Of course, we all know that won't happen, because it's completely ridiculous. And there's actually no rational reason to believe that this angle of attack makes any sense whatsoever.
No, well, it's an absurd idea, but this is one of the reasons I think that people like Oakley, Riley, and people in the States like Jaron and Bob Nodell and that, they know what shape the Earth is,
right?
And they come up with these explanations that seem simple, if you like. Oh, if the angle gets low enough, then things start to disappear from the bottom up,
right?
And their group of followers will accept that, because they're so part of the cult, or because they're just not bright enough to see through it. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I toyed with all sorts of ways of maybe trying to disprove this angle of attack thing, and I just decided that let's just take it out of the equation altogether. You can show the curvature.
Exactly. Let's show the curvature at 210 meters instead, right? Yeah, I actually really like that new observation you've done from Traprane Law. I can never say it right for some reason. Is that how you say it? Traprane?
It's a funny sort of word. Yeah, Traprane Law.
Yeah, Traprane Law. I can never say that. I don't know why. But yeah, we were talking earlier. It'd be interesting if you actually went up just a little bit higher, where you're looking down on the 210 meter observation, and then still show that you have things in the distance that are higher than 210 meters below it. That would totally just obliterate them and get rid of all the rest of their nonsense, because they always have objections, right?
Yeah. Well, that's right, and I knew there would be objections, So my first thoughts about this, as I said, I was filming on the beach and filming islands and stuff like that, and lighthouses and whatnot, and got some really, really good stuff, but knew it was going to be discarded or discounted just because of this famous angle of attack nonsense. So I thought, well, what can I do from a higher elevation? And I live near these bridges that go over the River Forth, and there's a place pretty close to where I live. I actually drive past it almost every day, where there's actually one of these ordnance survey, one of these surveying trig points, and it turned out that was 157 meters, and one of the bridge towers was 157 meters. So I thought I can take a shot from there across the bridge tower at the hills beyond Edinburgh, and show that it doesn't line up with 157 meters up the hills over there, and it worked really, really well, much better than I thought I could do with the photography equipment that I've got.
Right.
But because the distance was quite short, I couldn't. So the total distance, I think, was about 24 kilometers or something like that between my camera and the hills in the distance, with the bridge halfway between. The amount of curvature, the amount of change in height that you could show was about 20 or 30 meters. And so when I published those videos, some people thought, oh my God, that's amazing. And some of the flat earthers came on and said, yeah, but refraction can explain that. And you only had to have your camera a little bit out of position, and that would explain it, and so on. And so I thought, I need to get a much bigger drop. And I thought, And I realized you could actually look all the way along the Forth River Valley from the Edinburgh side across towards Glasgow. And there's some pretty tall hills across there. If I could just find something the right height near Edinburgh, then I could take this long shot. And hopefully, you know, I was really toying with the idea of getting better cameras, and I was thinking, oh, I'm going to have to lug the telescope up a hill and things like that. A bit of a nightmare.
I've done that now.
And I thought actually another hill called Berwick Law, which I thought was going to be good, which I'd seen and actually taken pictures of when I was doing the lighthouse observations. But it was too short. It's only 183 meters or something like that. And then the Traprain Law, which is just a bit further over. And I was on Google Earth and I saw, oh, there's a direct line of sight. You can see straight across. There's nothing tall in the way. Fantastic. And it turned out to be absolutely perfect. But it was 221 meters. And I thought, if I go to the top, the first video I took was right from the top of it. And I thought, I got home and was going to put a video together, and I thought, you know, if I show 221 meters, and so the bridge tower at 210 meters, and then claim, well, everything in the distance has to be lower than 210 meters because I'm looking downwards. If the Earth is flat, everything has to be lower than that. I know someone's going to start arguing about the geometry of it and come up with some complete fancy nonsense. And so I thought, well, let's go back and do it from 210 meters. So we're definitely at eye level if the Earth is flat, looking out there. And then there's no argument about angles and camera heights. You just have to accept it. And guess what? They've spent the last 3 months arguing about angles and camera heights and other tosh.
Of course, yeah. They have to. See, that's, I mean, this is what we keep coming back to, is that this is not a rational conversation we're having. And this actually brings something up, I guess, and that is, how long should we entertain these guys? You know, I mean, I understand like opposing them, but you know, directly talking to them, you know, as, you know, actually bringing their names up and stuff like that. Do you think that's beneficial to us, or is it just a waste of our time?
I think it's actually good if we can sometimes challenge the sort of the leading figures, if you like. If you can actually get them engaged in debate, I think that's quite useful in debate and discussion. But I mean, I made a decision a little while ago that I wasn't going to. It takes ages and ages and ages to actually put together the evidence and a really good case to debunk somebody else's nonsense. I mean, I told you when I was talking about that Anthony Riley saying you could see Ireland from St. Bees. It took me 3 minutes to convince myself he was wrong and that he was actually just seeing another bit of the Isle of Man. But it took days, well, not days, but certainly hours for me to put together the first video showing that he was wrong, and then weeks and weeks after that to you know, to actually make a really, really strong case, if you like.
Right.
And it takes a lot longer to debunk all this stuff. And I've taken the view that it's actually better to actually go out and just present, you know, find things and present evidence that shows the Earth is definitely not flat.
Right.
And present that and not waste quite so much time, you know, sort of trying to debunk or correct all the nonsense that they come up with, because they're going to come up with the nonsense regardless.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's different approaches to debunking, right? I mean, you have some debunkers that are just like presenting the stupidity for what it is, and they're just calling it stupid. And then there's other people like me and you that over-explain, and that's really where we get into our problems with long videos. Is we want to go like, I'm going to break it down for you. I'm going to make this 20-minute long video that's going to be boring as hell, but it's going to make sense. And then at the end of it, nobody really watches it. Nobody even cares, to hear the long detailed conversation. Or, I mean, people do, obviously. There's some people that are interested in it, but I'm saying the flat earthers don't. They'll see it's a 20-minute video and they'll skip ahead to 5 minutes, find something that you said, and then talk about that instead of the actual conversation, which brings up again, what is it? What is it about them going after you? Is it because you're there? I mean, yeah, they've gone after me too, but it seems like they have this thing for you, Miles, right now.
I don't know. I think it's been a bit less of that recently. Maybe I've just not been looking in the right places. Maybe they are still having a go at me.
It seems like Anthony said something about you like last week or something.
Well,
I'm just ignoring it.
I tried. I mean, he was the first person that I actually went on a live hangout with. We actually discussed gravity and density, and I'd actually done a bunch of experiments where I'd actually been dropping different sized and weighted objects and so on, and videoing that, and I'd got all the equations and stuff, and we went through the whole thing, and he really got nowhere to go at the end of it, and he ended up doing what he did in one of his videos, which was basically to say that the force equals mass times acceleration is just not correct.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And he actually did that in one of his videos. He actually said, I think he just tried to cross out the F. So F equals MA. He says there's no F. It's just MA. I was kind of like, what?
That makes sense. So get rid of the F. Get rid of the equal sign. It's just MA.
Yeah. I just But I mean, but I think ever since then he's had a bit of a.
I would like to remind everyone that this is the person that doesn't understand what a triangle is, an equilateral triangle. He doesn't know the angles of triangles. He doesn't know a 3, 4, 5 triangle. He doesn't understand the Pythagorean theorem. This is the same guy that's now trying to say physics doesn't work. So
there's so many things that he said over time. I mean, I was keeping a list actually. I was going to do a little video on it, which I was going to call something like I can't remember, but I was going to use C asterisk NT, but can't rather than Riley can't rather than
yes,
because there was sodium metal is just salt. The power lines were doing electrolysis on the water in Lake Pontchartrain. You remember that?
Yeah, electrolysis, exactly.
Yeah, and
CGI birds, CGI osprey.
So many of these things that are just so either so unbelievably stupid, or you kind of wonder whether he does it deliberately.
Right. Well, I really do think they are doing it deliberately. I mean, they are, for all intents and purposes, our foe. I mean, we're trying to prevent people from falling down the rabbit hole, and they are actively trying to engage people to go into the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are acting like cult members. It's strange. So it is important that we keep doing what we're doing. I'm not sure that we should address them directly or not, but that's still a question mark for me. But I think if we just keep producing observations and a little bit of science, some science experiments. Like I really had a lot of time with the equinox in 2017.
Yeah,
like doing something like that. Doing a lot more of those things and making where the physics and the science and the geometry is approachable by a layman. I think that's important.
Yeah,
I think that's important.
I think it is, and the thing, people ask me why do I bother, and the reason is if there was nobody like you or me, or and much better people than me out there. And there's lots of really good people who make fantastic videos. But if those people didn't exist, it didn't put out the real facts, the real truth, then YouTube would just be full of flat Earth stuff, as well as the moon landings didn't happen, space isn't real, the ISS is fake, as well as all the anti-vaxxers and the 9/11s and the chemtrailers and all these things.
And if you tell a lie long enough and loud enough, people start to believe it.
And if there's no opposition view ever put, then more and more people will start to believe it. And
I totally agree with that.
For me is that some of our politicians are already, that have already fallen for the climate change is not real or not man-induced stuff. And I mean that really, really, is frightening and it's alarming. And I mean Tony Blair, British Prime Minister, he was very coy about whether he vaccinated his children or not.
Really?
Yeah.
Tony Blair?
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting. Do you think he was doing it because he was trying not to offend a certain type of people?
I don't know, but at that time, his wife was into some pretty nutty stuff, actually. She had some of these life coach guru-y people who were into crystals and all kind of weird stuff.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I had no idea about all that.
Yeah. So he was asked quite often whether his children had the combined vaccination or not, the MMR vaccination, and he wouldn't answer. He wouldn't answer for a long time. I don't know whether that ever got resolved. I didn't,
That's very interesting.
I
had no idea about that.
And if politicians, if these things become popular, this kind of nonsense becomes popular, politicians will latch onto it because politicians are only interested in getting votes, really. I mean, some of them have some integrity, but not all of them by any means. And so I think it's important that people are out there putting the truth out there, even though we get told that we're lying when we're telling the truth.
I think that's I've kind of gotten used to it now, and I think that's the point where you have to get to that point where you're going, okay, that's going to happen. There's going to be these cult leaders, so to speak, or haters, whatever you want to call them, that are going to be insulted by your evidence, and they're going to attack you personally because of it, and just accept that that's the fact. I mean, that's what you have to do at this point.
Yeah.
I would like everybody in the chat, by the way, to give me some questions. Mention me and Miles, both of us, so that we can both read the questions or see the questions, and then we'll definitely go. We'll definitely go after those questions. I'd like to also thank Cam Shahid for the $20 super chat. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. And I would like to point out. I guess just kind of a proof of point here is that I just spent, a whole weekend essentially live streaming curvature of the earth. And I basically answered all the objections that they've ever thrown at me. Like, how do we know the camera isn't a fisheye lens? How do we know it's live? How do we know the location? And I used the P900 and my Sony to show, the genuine nature of the observation. And there were 3 other guys there that were also making the observations, and they had their own videos and their own photographs, which they have posted. Yet you still have people that are willing to say it's all a lie, right? That it's all fake. And that to me is very telling. Once you jump through the hoops enough and you get to the point where, okay, there's no rational, reasonable objection anymore, and you still have these people that are arguing with you, I think at that point, that's where I start saying, okay, these people are dishonest, right? Like at that point, they're dishonest, and you can start identifying like which ones are actually just trying to push something as trolls and which ones are being honest or not. So I don't know. I have a hard time believing anyone can be honest anymore, an honest flat earther. I just don't see it, but they are influencing others that are potentially honest and haven't seen these observations yet.
I can understand how people get sucked into it, because I mean, my introduction to it, I was actually watching some video, just on an evening, sitting having a beer, and I was watching videos about the moon landings, just almost nostalgically, you know, because they happened when I was a kid, you know, and I remember seeing and I was just killing time, and you know, some of the hoax ones popped up, and I just thought, I watched a couple of them and thought that can't be right. And then some flat earth ones started popping up as being recommended as well. And the first couple that I watched were really slick, really well-made videos. And okay, I'm a scientist who's worked in research labs for 35 years. And I said, this can't be right, but somehow some of what they were saying was convincing because of the way it was presented. And yeah, it took me a couple of minutes of just going, hang on a minute, check that. That's wrong.
Right. Right.
You know, and you know, a few minutes later, I was kind of like, this is outrageous. You know, I can't believe that people are actually producing videos like this. Yeah, but and how dishonest, because they're saying with such a surety that
exactly.
You know, that this is true and that's true, and you actually check it. No, it's not true. Horizon rise to eye level. No, it doesn't.
Right.
No, it doesn't. You know, period. That's it. You know?
Do you ever have suspicions about how well some of this stuff's produced? It's like,
yeah,
that looks like professional. It's like some of them are like professional quality productions.
and I think they're produced. I think so. Some of those it's just to make money. I mean, people, I think, just know that you can make money from YouTube if you get, you know, millions of views and stuff like that. You can make quite a lot of money, and that's, you know, that's the motivation. You know, and I don't have that great computer skills. I'm from the wrong generation probably, but I think it must take quite a lot of skill and quite a lot of time to put these videos together, you know, and I can't see people doing that for nothing, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah, that always has me wondering. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let me get to some of these questions here.
Let's see if we've got some questions. I've probably missed loads of them.
Al K says, when are you flying me out to Louisiana, Soundly? I need a lot more subs before that happens, Al.
I wanted to come out actually this winter. My wife turned 50 just before Christmas, and I think I told you I was sort of thinking about a holiday to, you know, for her 50th birthday, and she's always wanted to go to New Orleans.
Oh man, that'd be perfect.
You know, and but unfortunately, our personal finance situation kind of didn't allow it.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah, there was an issue earlier in the year, so yeah,
that shield money doesn't pay too well.
That one got kiboshed. Pity.
I hear ESA shield money is even worse than NASA shield money. So
I missed that. Sorry.
I said I hear ESA shield money is even worse than NASA shield money. So. Okay, so Mild Chestnut says, Soundly, no question, just huge thanks to both of you for all the content you've done so far. Hey, thanks, Mild Chestnut. We appreciate that.
Yeah, cheers.
Mendel says, Miles and Soundly, have you ever seen a flat earther do something that made your brain shut down for a second? You want to take that one first, or?
I've heard them say things that have just made my brain shut down. The classic one I think was Riley with his stars through a solar filter. That one, yeah, yeah. I was pretty dumbstruck for about 5 minutes.
It's like, where do you even start with that?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I recently heard a flat earther who shall not be named talk about doing sexually deviant things to another individual on the internet. And I was just like blown away by that. But what blew me away even more, and the thing that really made my brain start to kind of shut down, was that his panel members were justifying it. They were actually justifying what he was saying. And I was like,
no way.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah, I have screenshots of that, just to let you know.
Yeah.
So that really made me kind of like my brain go into blue screen for a second. Yeah. I was like, golly, okay, now I know who you are, man. Goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got any more questions?
Jimmy Kalinin asked, how much is a P1000? It's about $1,000. 1,000 US dollars.
Yeah. Well, it's about $1,000, but it's about £1,000 over here, and a 1-to-1 ratio for.
It's interesting. It's more expensive. Why is it more expensive over there?
Because it's over here.
Shipping's different.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, there are people who buy stuff from the States and get it shipped to the UK and still save money.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Stiggy,
doing the same thing, because I could have got a 6-inch instead of the 4-inch. Because I've got the Nexstar 4-inch Casa grain, which is actually fine because it's quite portable. But yeah. But that I was going to save money by actually getting it shipped over.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I wonder why it's that way.
I don't know.
So Stiggy's in the chat. Apparently he's one of those guys that isn't aware that I just did a full weekend live stream of curvature.
How could it?
Go ahead.
All over Twitter. It was all over YouTube. Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I suppose it was appearing, a lot when I was looking at stuff.
Right.
Maybe other people would miss it. I mean, I found a channel today that I'd never seen before. And the guy, he seems to do a lot of stuff with magnets, and it was something about the Earth's magnetic field. It's a Danish bloke, but he's got 500,000 subscribers, and I was completely unaware of him until this afternoon. So yeah. It does happen.
Well, you see Simon Dan, you see Conspiracy Cats, you see Wolfie, you see those guys starting to get subs.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I should be getting subs. I feel like I'm doing everything I need to be doing to get subs, but I'm just not getting them. I mean, I'm getting a little bit, but not like those guys.
The thing is that you said it earlier. We often try to really sort of explain what we're doing and why we're doing it and how what it means and so on, quite get away. Whereas the stuff I think that appeals to Joe Punter more is just the taking the mickey out of the flat earthers and the other conspiracy theorists. And I think that's why Simon Dan actually, I think he does it, and Cats actually do it pretty well. They don't just poke fun at them. They actually put a bit of science and a bit of explanation in there as well. But there is that, sort of say what? You can't be serious.
Right.
Attitude in the whole video, which I think works quite well.
Yeah. I really like Simon Dan. I mean, other people have said, well, he's boring, and I'm like, what are you talking about? You have no sense of humor. Then I mean, he's very dry humor, which I really like and really appreciate. And then he does stuff like his astronomy class thing, that he did the other day. So
I haven't seen that yet. I want to have a look at that because
he's got a whole series he's starting. I'm really looking forward to it. Actually,
my dad had a telescope that he bought. It's I need to get a better mount for it, but he bought it years ago, and it sat in his loft, and he never used it because a couple of years after he got dementia and couldn't handle it. But I brought that up this Christmas, so I've got that here now. So I've got another slightly better telescope. So I really want to start doing some astrophotography and things like that. Yeah.
I've seen stuff from you'll see AD 2.0 in my chat. Me and him talk pretty regularly about astro, and he's done some stuff, man, that will just blow you away. Like, it's just unbelievable the stuff he's done with a scope same size as mine, and I cannot get the same results. I'm just trying to learn it as much as possible, because I'm not as good with the astro as I am with the terrestrial photography. That's for sure.
No, I think it's quite challenging. It's quite difficult. I'm not much of a terrestrial photographer either, so I've got my work cut out. But something to do,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you like photography, astro is like the next extension of it, right? But
when the eclipse was on, I got in touch with some guys. Remember when Riley was denying it was the moon that was going in front of the sun?
Right.
Yeah. I got in touch with some guys who'd taken some really awesome earthshine shots and stuff like that.
Right.
I was talking to them about how they did it and so on. So yeah, it's interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Simon Grabowski says, Soundly and Miles Davis, do you worry you will become less intelligent and lose brain cells listening to flat earthers? No, I don't.
If I listened to them, yeah, maybe I would. But
I only worry about wasting too much time on the wrong types of flat earthers. Like, there's nothing you can do to convince Anthony Riley of anything. It's completely pointless to have any conversation, debate, or whatever with that guy. There's no use talking to him. But there's other people that it is worthwhile talking to. I think you can actually help those people. So,
and there have been a few who've jumped ship fairly recently.
Right. There have been a few. Yep. Sean G is one of them.
Yeah.
Jamie Brown, I think, is another one.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there'll be others who just
there's some. Yeah. Well, I was about to say there are some people that I know personally that actually reached out to me and said, hey, I don't talk about this, but I used to be a flat earther, and what you guys are doing is really does help. So keep doing it, that type of thing.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, it is. So there are people behind the scenes that are, I would say, for every one person in chat, there's 9 lurkers, and there's lurkers that are definitely being affected by what we do. So, and I think it does help when we have a good attitude about it. When we have, we're not cussing at them and we're not, making them sound like idiots type thing. When we're actually just having a good attitude and approaching them as a human being, I think it really does help. So I think, of course, people like Anthony Riley are idiots, but it's not all flat earthers. It's just people like Anthony Riley. So anyway, okay. So this is another question for us. Compared to the past, what scientific evidence or technology to date is best for proof of a sphere? You want to take that one?
Yeah, you can't prove the sphere. That's the point. Yeah, all that happens is you have this hypothesis that the Earth is a sphere, and each piece of evidence that's gathered, no matter what it is, will either disprove that hypothesis or add to the weight of evidence that supports it. You never get to, in science, you never get to a point where you say, we have proved this is true. You do get to a point where you say, we are so convinced that this is likely to be true that it's going to take some amazing new piece of evidence or new discovery to make a change. And I mean, Newton's theory of gravity was like that.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, Newton's theory of gravity was like that until people started getting more sophisticated equipment that they were able to make measurements of orbits of planets and so on, and they didn't quite fit with Newton's theory of gravity. And so people were saying, well, there's something not quite right about it. And then, fortunately, Einstein came along, and it all sort of kind of got explained by relativity. So but you don't ever prove anything in science. I don't know what the best ways of disproving a flat Earth, and things like what Soundly does, Pontchartrain, I think is just fantastic. He's so lucky to live close to it, but it's great that you spotted it and actually have been able to do the stuff that you've done. And I do my little bit with, here in Scotland, but I don't think you can ever prove the Earth is a sphere. But heck, we've got pictures from video from space now that
I'd like to qualify that. I would like to qualify that. The word proof is used different ways. I mean, it's used like the technically correct way when you're talking about science for math, or it's used colloquially. So colloquially, the word proof, or what we mean by proof is it so likely that there's nothing else that can even come close to explaining it? And yes, we have. In that case, we've proven that the Earth is a globe, and that's simply by taking photographs of it from space. End of story. I mean, that is the best evidence that I would say proves definitively that the Earth is a globe. I mean,
yeah, I go up though because it's just remotely possible,
right?
That
it's remotely right. Exactly. It's remotely possible that we live in the Matrix.
Yeah. It's so remotely possible.
Yeah. Exactly. But I mean, if you get so pedantic about it that you can't look at a Rubik's Cube and say I've just proven that I'm looking at a Rubik's Cube, then it gets a little silly, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And that's where we are right now with the globe. I mean, we're looking at a globe. It looks like a globe. As far as we can tell, it's a globe. And to say we haven't proven it it's really kind of getting silly. But it is true. The best model and the most supported model is a globe. That is the truth of it. And what we can do with absolute certainty is disprove the flat Earth model. That's what we can do, and that's what our evidence does on a daily basis. Is it disproves the flat Earth model? Okay, so Sue Lynch says, thanks to both of us. Nathan Grant says, soundly you provide observations and interesting discussions, not laughs and mockeries. He's probably talking about when we were talking about subs. Voice of Reason says, you deserve a lot more subs. Your stuff is great and unique. I appreciate that. Soundly and Miles, keep up the good. This is Sherlock Holmes. Soundly and Miles, keep up the good work. Unfortunately, flurfers are pretty blinkered and don't want to give their precious up. That was a really hard sentence to read for someone. The simple man's conspiracy has got them bad. Yes. Were you going to say something about that?
No, it's okay. I'm just agreeing with you.
Slade says, Soundly, I just got through looking at your stuff for Lake Pontchartrain. Truly awesome stuff. You and all the guys deserve massive thanks for putting all that work in. Cheers. You're welcome, man. We enjoyed it. It was a fun weekend. I guess apparently Sir Savage is trying to say something to me because somebody's telling him to mention me. I'm looking for more real questions here. Let's see.
Jesse's saying his next project is measuring R.
Measuring R. Nice.
Well, I've got a video in preparation calculating R from the observations from Traprain Law. Oakley won't like it, but who cares?
Adam's just saying thanks for the shout out I gave him. AD 2.0. He doesn't have a lot of content on YouTube, but I keep asking him to put his music up because he has some cool music.
All right.
And I keep asking him to throw it up there for me. And he does have some really cool astrophotography he should put on his channel too, but he just hasn't done it yet.
Absolutely. I love looking at those sorts of pictures.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody's asked, what are my next projects? Good question. I'm going to push the current one a little bit harder. I think I want to do some more stuff. Seeing as I've developed a few. I mean, I was getting a bit fed up with having 200 subscribers and thinking it's not worth doing. But now I've got well over 2,000, and people seem to be writing nice things in the comment section. I want to do some stuff about biology and the things that used to interest me, sort of when I worked in that field, and just to do some educationally stuff, as well as continuing to bash flat Earth, and maybe look at one or two other conspiracy theories. Although there are people who do it much better than I could. So the climate change stuff worries me. The anti-vaxxer stuff, I could probably do a decent job on with a biology background. But people like Potholer do such good stuff on the climate change stuff. It'd take me a year to even get remotely close to having the knowledge that he can bring to it. So
yeah. I agree. I agree with those sentiments. There's a lot of other things that are silly that we could be talking about, but there are other people that are doing a much better job than me at talking about it. So yeah, I don't really feel the need to do it. But one of the things that the chemtrails is just kind of like flat Earth, but it doesn't really. It only affects people in the sense that it leads them down the rabbit hole of just dealing with the cult type mentality. But the things that are really, I think, dangerous to me are the anti-vaxxers. I think that has a direct impact on people and society in general. And I would like to learn a lot more about that. I don't know enough about it. I do know enough about it to know that my brother had the option to choose vaccines that didn't have any preservatives in them. So there's a lot of information that's out there that's really antiquated. It's old information, and I kind of wanted to maybe start talking about that, but haven't gotten there yet. I don't know enough about it.
My older brother has some learning difficulties, and he's never really been properly diagnosed. But my mother has always blamed the vaccinations he had for it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, there's no evidence to support that. But in her mind, she's absolutely convinced it was the vaccine that caused it.
Right.
Yeah. It's an easy association to make because those sorts of things will become apparent around about the age of 2, which is not long after most young children get vaccinated. So you start to notice the child's not speaking yet, or they're not developing quite the right way intellectually, if you like.
Right.
And it's coincidence that the two things happen at the same time. You become aware of whatever issues there are, mentally around the same time as vaccinations are happening. So I've tried to explain that to my mum, and she won't have a word of it.
Of course. You got to pick your battles, man. For sure. I want to go back to that question you were asking me what our future projects were. The future of my channel right now is going to start becoming more just, fun little projects, maybe fun photography, some astro. I would like to kind of show off Louisiana a little bit. So I might do some photography in the marshes and the swamps, maybe go out and hunt some gators and stuff like that. I think, I've actually taken photographs. Like last night, I posted, I guess what I would say is one of my first videos that's along those lines, where I was showcasing the Crescent City connection. And that was just pure photography, just of a cool subject. It's indirectly related to flat Earth, but it's not directly related to flat Earth. And so I think I'll try and go that route a little bit more with my photography. And I would like to do some sciencey type experiments again, looking at sunspots, astrophotography, which can become science-based astrophotography. Those are the type of things that I'm really interested in and probably will be pursuing. after last weekend, I just don't think there's anything else that I can do as far as flat Earth observations, except for going somewhere else, which I probably will do. I'd like to go to Salt Lake City and maybe even the UK eventually.
Oh, yeah. Well, don't you dare come to the UK without letting me know.
You know that would never happen, Miles.
I'd buy you a beer or something. So somebody mentioned there's a Mercury transit this year. I think is it November? So that might be a cool thing to look at a bit later on. And obviously there'll be things like eclipses and lunar eclipses and things like that happening. Which
did you say there's a Mercury transit?
I think there's a transit of the Mercury transiting the Sun happening this year. Have I got that right? Somebody in the chat mentioned it, and I did remember that I'd actually looked it up.
That would be actually a really cool observation to make, especially if you could get multiple observers going at the same time, because we could definitely do some stuff with parallax and determining the distance to Mercury and to the Sun and stuff like that just from pure geometry. So that would be really cool. Jen Morgan says, what we really need is a mass effort to bring an end to conspiracy thinking and promotion by the media, thinking fair means showing fools along with truth. Jen Morgan, I would say that it's even weighted further in the wrong direction with the media, because the media shows fools and doesn't really show the other side. I mean, they might bring on somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who, let's be honest, is really out of his depth when it comes to flat earthers. They don't play by his rules. He doesn't understand the arguments they make. And so they take advantage of that. The people that are on the ground and dealing with it every day, like Greater Sapien, for example, would be a much better person to interview than Neil deGrasse Tyson, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think that what they do, the media does, is actually a disservice in that they highlight these fools, and immediately those fools get subscribers and views, and basically the media is just helping to pad their pockets, and it's really unfortunate, but that's what ends up happening every time the media does this.
Yeah, and when they interview, the interviewers don't know the facts. They're very good at their job, but they don't know much about science, generally speaking. And so we had some flat earthers interviewed on British breakfast television, I think it was a little while ago, and they just reeled off a stream of complete falsehoods. And the interviewers couldn't say that's not true because they didn't know for sure. And you could see the interviewers, they're sitting there thinking, is that right? Oh, I never knew that. I never knew that. And of course, they've just been so wise.
Right.
And I think on that occasion, I don't think there was a scientist brought in to challenge them at all. So they just got like 10 minutes to spout their flat earth gobbledygook. And
right.
It was horrible, really horrible.
Totally agree with that. All right, here's somebody. Mendel says, do you think debunking is doing enough to develop people's thinking skills instead of being edutainment? And look at the tards. Not that either of you would do that, Miles Davis Soundly.
Are you talking about people who it's been more time ridiculing and not educating?
Oh yeah, okay, that could be right.
Maybe something like that. I think there's a place for all of it.
Yeah, there's a place for all of it, and I've had people tell me the same thing. Like they don't like this particular person because all they do is sit behind their desk and ridicule them. And while I choose not to do that, or try not to do that, because I have in the past, and of course with Flat Earth Tears, Grandpa Soundly is kind of my outlet for that, and that's where I kind of put all of that type of content. But I try not to, because I feel like it works against what I'm trying to do for the most part. It is entertaining, and to each their own, I guess. If you want to do that, you can. There's nothing wrong with satire. There's nothing wrong with parody. I think they have different goals than I do, and that's okay. That's the way I feel about it.
Yep. same.
Okay, Sean Hawkins, $10. Thank you. $10 of karma coming at you. Appreciate it, Sean Hawkins. Cam Shahid says, Sally, can you please put Miles' link in the description? Oh, I guess you're looking for your channel?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me do that real quick. Yeah, I will be sure to add Miles's link to the description, but I'm also going to, can't believe I didn't put that in there. I'm also going to add it to the live chat right now, just as soon as I pull up the video here. Last one. I just linked the channel. How about that? There we go. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't put your channel in the description, Miles. I should have. This is Miles's channel. I just posted it. And I will put it in the description as well. Simon Grabowski says, Soundly and Miles Davis, how do you get flat earthers to finally use a solar filter in their observations? It's up to them.
Yeah, some of them do, but they don't like what it shows. So
Creamy Pasta says, Soundly, that's what transits are famous for, parallax, error from multiple locations. Yes. If we have a Mercury transit, that would be a really fun science project. It would be, really interesting to actually measure solar distances based on that transit using the parallax. That would be a really good project, because that's one of the things that I keep trying to come back to with the flat earthers that say we think the sun and moon is close and all that, is that you can, in fact, measure that with basic trigonometry, and I try and invite them to do it because you can measure it yourself, especially with the tools that we have these days. It's very possible to do.
11th of November, apparently. Oh, somebody, AD 2.0 has just put that in the chat. I just Googled it. Yeah, 11th of November.
Nice.
So November, so it will be cloudy in Scotland.
Of course.
I got a guy from now, where's he from? Scandinavia somewhere. I can't remember exactly, but I think whether it's Denmark or Norway or somewhere. Got in touch with me and said he wanted to do some moon observations, the two of us, and at the same time take pictures of the moon and do some experiments and stuff. And we've been trying to get it set up since before Christmas.
Right.
And it's cloudy every time we want to try and do it. Both of us are suffering with rubbish weather.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I recently had it had to be like 8 different potential solar or lunar transits of the ISS, and they were just coming one after another. And there was a couple that I could do literally from my backyard.
I've had the same.
And it was just cloudy for the entire time, just solid clouds. I was like, you got to be kidding me here. It was brutal.
Went out and got the telescope all set up for one, and it was what we call a clear night here in Scotland, and it's a lunar transit, and but there were a few clouds around,
right?
And just at the time the transit was due to happen, the moon went behind this cloud, and
of course. Why wouldn't it?
3 hours wasted driving there and getting the whole thing set up and getting ready and waiting.
I know. Terrible. I was lucky in my first few transits that I had clear skies. So
yeah,
Louisiana's like that too. It's you never know. The weather changes so fast here. But we do have clearer skies than you typically.
I'm so jealous of Wolfie and people down in Australia. They seem to get a lot of really, really good weather and
conditions. Yeah,
good chances for observations. Yeah.
Daylight Ohio says, Sally and Miles, are you surprised how hard it is to get through to people that it's a sphere?
Yes. Yeah,
I am. I'm really surprised. I've told people this before. I'll relay it again. That my first video was me, literally, I bought a mount for my cell phone to put on a tripod, and I faced it straight down on a piece of paper, a piece of loose leaf paper, and I did math, and I like just drew out a diagram and did some math showing why it can't be flat based on the shape of the moon or size of the moon. And
you 5 red pairs.
What's that?
Are you 5 red pairs?
I'm not 5 red pairs.
I know.
Yes, it was very similar to 5 red pairs. And whenever I did it, I was like, "That's it, game over. Thanks for playing, guys." And I don't know what I was thinking. Looking back on it all this time, I'm like, that should have convinced. That video alone should have convinced people, and I should have known then. Like, there's some people you just can't convince them, and it is really surprising that you can't, because it seems like you should be able to. Okay, I keep trying to load messages, and the way it works, it just like reloads the messages, and so sometimes I miss some. If I miss them, I'm sorry.
You keep asking them, guys, if you've got them. Who's my favorite flat earther? Simon Grabowski's asked that one. No need to explain the reasons if you don't want to. Favorite flat earther. God. That's a tough one. I'm gonna have to think about that.
It's pretty easy for me. My favorite flat earther is an ex-flat earther.
Yeah, well, there would be that, but then they're not a flat earther anymore. They're still a flat earther. Really, really do. I mean, I said earlier that I really would like to have a proper conversation with Ranty to try and find out what makes him tick, because so many of his videos are such good flat earth disproofs. I'm curious about Ranty, so I'd put him up there.
Sometimes I wonder if Ranty is a clever infiltration into flat earth, and he's literally trying to just put as much globe evidence forth that he can while calling it flat, just to make him look silly, because it seems like it.
Oh, someone's put Mr. Thrive and Survive. No, I cannot stand him. His voice drives me potty, and he just says so many completely untrue things, and I can't handle that.
I would say Jose Gonzalez. I still have hope for Jose Gonzalez. So he's probably my favorite right now. He's in my favorite slot.
Yeah, he's the one who came to Pontchartrain and took some pictures. Is he?
Right. Yeah.
Didn't take the right one, but he took some.
Yeah, I mean, he did the same thing as Ranty. He posted curvature videos. Jim 1 says, Soundly, do you think flat earth will be a diploma subject in university? No, that will never happen.
It should never happen. But there are people trying to get school curriculums changed, and I think they'll fail. I think there are too many sensible people in the world, but I get worried. All the climate change stuff. You've got a president at the moment who just doesn't think climate change is real, and worries me.
Reason will win out. Reason will win out. The thing about presidents is they change.
Yes,
they change all. So Dandy says, Sally, the flat Earth game is too much entertainment for them to give up on it. Yeah, that's the truth. Sally, Miles Davis, have you ever converted any flat earthers that you know of? Yes, I said earlier. I've had people specifically reach out to me. Now, you wouldn't know who they are because they're not channels, right? They're just people that entertained the idea of flat Earth and behind the scenes, and then came around. So yeah, I've had people reach out to me about it. Miles?
Yeah, maybe one or two, but it's hard to know for sure. I mean, there was a guy who was talking all kinds of stuff on Twitter, and I asked him if he wanted to come onto a live stream just very recently. And when he came on, he could barely put two sentences together, and really had nothing to say. but he got in touch afterwards and said he changed his mind and he didn't think the Earth was flat anymore. But yeah, whether that's real or not, I don't know. And I've had one other who, like you, not somebody who's been public at all, but has reached out and said, thanks, because they were getting drawn into it. They weren't really ever a flat earther, but they were starting to be convinced by stuff they were seeing online, and some of the stuff from my videos, and I directed them towards other people like Wolfie and you and Greater Sapien and people like that, and that finally convinced them that flat Earth was a load of bunk.
Right.
So you do get these little glimpses that maybe what we do is doing some good, or maybe it's just occupying my time.
Yeah, hard to tell sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But I like Greater Sapien. That's what I was saying earlier. When the media, I think Greater Sapien is very articulate, right? So I think when the media is looking for somebody, they should come to somebody that's like actually on the ground floor, actually fighting these idiots on a daily basis and knows the arguments, but can also articulate why they're wrong. And I think Greater Sapien would be a really good spokesperson in that case. I'd love to see him be the person they go to every time.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think you do a pretty good job as well, actually. I think
Well, I try to. I try. Yeah, I mean, I guess at times I'm okay. But
I am an R and can't find the right words, and I'd be rubbish at that sort of thing.
Up to now, I hadn't even thought of myself that way because, before my face was shown, I was just trying not to be outed, so to speak. But I guess now that everybody knows my face, I would love to do something like that. But yeah, I don't. In the past, I've thought about Greater Sapien because he's just able to articulate things very concisely. I mean, if you look at his videos, he says a whole bunch of stuff that makes a lot of sense in a very short period of time.
That's right.
And I think that
he does it in live streams as well. So he's had a few live streams where he's just taking questions from the chat, a bit like we are now, and he's able to put together logical arguments and pick out the best bits of evidence and stuff, quickly and communicate it really, really effectively.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, let's see if there's anything else left here. One more. I see one more.
Greater Sapiens in the chat.
Right.
We're talking about it. Interesting. You go swelling.
Thanks for stopping by, Greater Sapien. Really appreciate that.
Yeah. No, we love your stuff. We really do. Your some of your early videos, Greater Sapien, that you did on debunking a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. They were some of the earliest ones that I watched on YouTube on this sort of topic and sort of subject, and I thought they were awesome.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by, Greater Sapien. Glad to see you here, man. We have to get you in here, Greater Sapien, for an interview. So I think the last one here is Sally and Miles Davis. What would be the most outlandish claim a flat earther has claimed? That's a very hard question.
Well, I go back to Riley's stars through a solar filter. I'm sorry, that's it's got to be right up there.
Well, Riley's the gift that keeps on giving. He just keeps coming up with them. That's the thing. So it's hard to really pin down one particular idea. I think they all have a very outlandish claim. That is that all photographs from space are fake. I mean, I think that is pretty ridiculous.
Claiming that the Earth is flat is pretty damn ridiculous.
There's so many of them. I mean, electrolysis for explaining Lake Pontchartrain, seeing Ireland from St. Bees, you can't see Earth shine. You know, you can't photograph a new moon, which you can. That's what an eclipse is. That's what the earth shine of a you know, the earth shine is actually coming off of a new moon during an eclipse. A lot of things that you can just straightforward, like say what you just said A, and or you just said not A and here's A, you know, and like you can just show it directly with one picture. So Zinderidge says, soundly, why is flat earth so addictive no matter what side you're on? For me personally, it's the psychology. I'm very interested in the psychology of it. Like, how can I better communicate to someone that is in the rabbit hole? How, you know, how to get out of it. That's why one of the reasons that I had Mick West on is because I think he does a good job at explaining it. And, you know, a lot of us are all looking for that, you know, the secret wording or the secret evidence or whatever that would do it. And the reality is, it's just, there isn't any. It's more about the process and taking the time and investing it in people than it is about coming up with that one debunk that everybody, you know, that would just end it all. And I've learned that the hard way, because I don't know what else I can do as far as concentrating goes. So,
yeah.
Miles?
No, I've got nothing left to say on that.
Well, it has been a good interview, man. I really appreciate you coming by. It's been an hour and 37 minutes, so we're definitely going long here. So let's wrap it up. I'll let you wrap it up. What do you have to say, Miles?
Well, I do need to wrap it up, because I've got to get up and work in the morning, and yes. I turned into a pumpkin 38 minutes ago. So, no, it's been a pleasure. It's been really interesting and good to kind of get to know you a little bit better. So, I didn't realize you were interested kind of in the psychology of these kind of flat Earth and other conspiracy theory things. So that's been good. And yeah, just nice to chat with someone. Sometimes you spend hours in front of the computer putting together these videos, and you forget people are out there and actually do watch them and appreciate them, and it's real people.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love your videos. I mean, I love what you put together. I love your observations. So please keep doing it, and it's definitely appreciated by me, man.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Thanks everybody for coming. I think we're going to go ahead and shut it down. Just be on the lookout for more just regular photography. I'll probably be putting more of that out instead of flat earth stuff, just regular photography. If you're interested in that, let me know. I definitely would like some feedback on that. Thanks, guys.
Okay. All right. Cheers. Bye, everyone.
Now I just have to figure out how to shut it down.
I have that problem as well.
I always lose the window.
I do these things and I'm worried that I'm leaving the whole thing streaming and I'm going to say something inappropriate or show something inappropriate.
I literally could not find the window right now. Okay, here it is. Okay, thanks, Miles.